Yes, guys, welcome back to Chasing Green Arrows. It's a Wednesday night special with me and Big Man Bacco. Usually we stream around lunchtime. Today we're going slightly later because today's a special pod because we're going to be doing the big questions as always. We're going to be showing Big Man's team, but also we're going to talk about a wild card and what percentage chance both of us might be to pull in that trigger. I'm loving the new titles you may have noticed with the stream coming soon. Big Man, did you notice them? They're looking quite sharp. Me and you look good together.
They're looking very, very sharp. I really like them.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. How was your game week, mate? Was it as bad as everyone else's?
I don't like you anymore, man. You talked me into Son last week. I captained Son. I got him in for Saka. Yeah, it was FOMO basically, and I didn't want to miss out on a.
FOMO will get the best of us, man. We all get it, and yeah. As the week went on, as the days went on last week, more and more managers were buying Son, and knowing so many were captaining him, I thought, yeah, a lot. Instead of going Newcastle defender, went Son. But you had two transfers, so did you go Newcastle defender and Son?
Yeah, I sold Saliba. I got Trippier in, so that worked out well. That worked out well. That was a move I was gonna do anyway, whether or not I did the Son move.
Yeah.
But I didn't have Maddison either, and I was basically faring the worst with Spurs performing well.
Yeah.
And I did think that there was an opportunity to go against the crowd with the Son captain, which is why I made the move. I mean, if I didn't think Son was the best captain, then I wouldn't have made the move. Yeah. Turns out it didn't really work out that way, but I'm glad that it wasn't as bad as the numbers suggested could have been. Haaland missed 5 big chances. He recorded the highest XGI he's ever recorded in a single fixture.
Unbelievable.
In the Premier League. So, I mean, it could have been curtains for us had he scored as many as the stats suggest he should have.
Yeah, that was quite unbelievable. We got away with one. And also I got away with one because I sold Rashford. And again, we'll look at his numbers later, but Rashford owners were quite unlucky. So although it was one of my worst game weeks I can ever remember, I also got terribly lucky. Guys, hello to everyone in the chat. Damien's with us, Eddie and Tiffany and Heather, the Indian football coach. Good to see you at the weekend, dude. Thomas is there, RTJ, squad member, and Jono HD as well. Some big games of football tonight. The good news is we come off air as they kick off in a couple of minutes, in like an hour's time. But in terms of team news for Man United, the big news is Palestri starts on the right-hand side. And of course, Højlund is in there as well. So definitely one to scout. Dallo, obviously, with Wan-Bissaka out for a while. But perhaps even bigger news at Arsenal, definitely one to monitor because Raya's still in goal. So we thought it might be who's going to be the number one. Will it be sharing competitions, one as the champs, one as the Prem? Or is it clearly a distinction of the new number one? Still too early for FPL to jump on Raya. Give him a week or two of more starts without Ramsdale featuring. And maybe we just know that 4.8 bonus point magnet is first choice. Havertz comes into the midfield and Trossard is on the left for Martinelli. Big Man, how long are we expecting Martinelli to be out for? Do we know?
Arteta did say that he will be assessed. There was no timeline on his recovery. But yes, I agree on the Raya point. And this is one of the reasons I think there's a bargain waiting for us in at 4.8. We've seen time and again how good he is with bonus because of his pass completion and save percentage. I think if for those of us who are wildcarding in game week 9 or 10, Raya could be very, very popular because that's the time Arsenal's fixtures turn again. And if you're expecting them to be, let's say, behind City in terms of clean sheets this season, then that's amazing value at that price.
Yeah. Whackim in the chat says Ramsdale will start the North London derby. I'm not so sure after tonight. Let's see how Raya plays, but I'd be surprised now if Raya doesn't start that match. But yeah, one definitely to monitor. And one benefit to not wildcarding this week, and later in today's show, we're going to see the benefit to wildcarding this week. And there's lots of them. But one of a few reasons that stops me is I still need more information. And one position or two positions I'm still unsure on is the goalkeepers. And if Raya's a 4.8 first choice keeper at Arsenal, when I wildcard in perhaps 3 or 4 weeks, I'll be able to select him. I still feel like selecting him this week would be a little bit too risky.
To an extent, yeah. I agree. To an extent, yes. And there was this very crazy quote by Arteta, which suggested that he'll rotate keepers mid-game. I mean, that sort of put me off. So I mean, we could have a situation where they rotate on the kind of opponent they're facing, like is the case with Steele and Verbruggen at Brighton. So definitely 2 or 3 weeks we'll have a much clearer idea of what Arteta feels regarding his goalkeepers.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think you're right. We've had questions in the chat about replacements for Martinelli. We should also just touch on very quickly potential replacements for Jackson and Chilwell. I don't think you don't have to replace all these players, but Martinelli replacements, I have Foden, as you guys all know. I think Foden's quite a nice replacement, but you could also move down or to like an Mbomo or a Diaby, right?
I think Mbomo is clear this week. The fixtures are turning. I mean, Newcastle away was the tough one, which is out of the way now. Now he has Everton at home, Forest in the next two. We know how bad Everton are, and you'd expect Brentford to score 3 to 4 goals in the next two fixtures, and it's very hard to imagine Mbomo not being involved on set pieces, 90-minute man, penalties. Great pick.
Do you think Everton are poor defensively? Because I don't mind Everton defensively. I'm with you. Like Mbomo's the standout, and he should get action against Everton. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a nil-nil. That wouldn't shock me.
I rate them much better at home as opposed to away. I think they're a terrible defense away from home, and this game is away. In game week 7 and 8, they're home to Luton and Bournemouth. So I mean, those fixtures are fine for everyone. I won't be surprised if they kept Luton out. I mean, and Morris blanked for everyone who wants to bring him in. I mean, that's something that's in my mind. I don't think Everton are terrible away. I think they did a good job against Arsenal as well. I expected the game to be tight, which is why I sold Saka, and it was that way. It did turn out to be the case.
Yeah, I think for you that sold Saka, a little bit unlucky. Like that assist was reliant on, almost a worldie from Trossard. And maybe for me, Saka, perhaps on paper, should have been the better sell with hindsight than Rashford, because now Rashford's got a really nice fixture too. Guys, we're going to see Bigman's team next, and then we'll look at some of the big questions. So, Bigman, let's just show your team for initial thoughts, and then we'll talk about the wildcard team later in today's show. And look, throughout the show, we'll bring up some of your questions as well. So this is where you're at. You got a little bit of money in the bank, and you're back to one free transfer. You obviously went Trippier in and Son in last time. If you're not wildcarding, what's your sort of top line thoughts here?
I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts, because I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with my free transfer.
I mean, you could roll. You could roll. You could take a hit. You could it's not. It's fine.
I actually want to hear. I actually want to hear from the chat as well as to what the listeners think, because it's an all right team. I mean, the front seven is fine. Jackson has not performed, so I mean, the obvious move is to take a Chelsea player out. So I mean, Jackson to Alvarez is something which I am considering. And it could happen as soon as tonight, because Alvarez is rising. The other move that I'm considering, if I don't make this transfer, is to sell Chilwell for Botman and double up on Newcastle, because they have a very good run of fixtures. And I mean, the third is to save, or let's say if I feel crazy, I might wildcard, but I don't think I'll go there. I don't think this team requires a wildcard.
I don't think this team's anywhere near a wildcard, mate. When you messaged earlier, because I asked you to put a percentage on it, and I said I'm at 0%, and you said you're at 20-30%. I think if I was you, I'd be at 5%. Like I think this is I think you're well set up.
I mean, the only changes that I can sort of, the temptation behind wildcarding was to sort the defense out, because the defense in this team is a shambles, and to get Salah for his run from this week on, which is the main temptation. But I agree. I think there's better value and use of waiting till, let's say, game week 8 at the very least. I think I can get away with waiting till then, and then I'll see what it takes, because at the moment I have a plan, and I think I'll wildcard around game week 9 or 10. I don't think I will go before that.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think if I was you, I'd be making one of two moves this week. It would be, Chilwell out, and that will be dependent on what Pochettino says in the press conference. Like, he might allude to the fact that he wants to be more attacking, therefore Mudryk. We'll look at that comparison later. Or the obvious move is Jackson out to Alvarez. And look, obviously that's a move I'd encourage. I think that's the obvious move this week. It's not one I'm looking at. I've already got 3 City. I can't get Alvarez, and I have got Jackson. So I'm looking at possibly keeping Jackson, or going a little bit punty to a Darwin or something a little bit really left field. But in your case, Jackson to Alvarez feels obvious. But at the same time, you like me, we like underlying stats and we pick players often based on those numbers. I still feel like Jackson is due. I don't know if that's naive Chelsea fan talking, or if he's just Timo Werner 2.0 and it's like all the numbers are there, but actually he's never gonna do it. But there's something at the back of my mind which is like the fixtures are still comfortable. Sure, Villa are doing well, but this is at home for Chelsea, and Villa are going to Poland on Thursday night. Like it's a long journey for them to Warsaw. I don't know. I'm struggling to sell Jackson, and everyone will be put off by the 4 yellows. Freddie's just mentioned that in the chat. Those 4 yellows were all for dissent. He's gonna keep his mouth shut. He's not gonna pick up another yellow for dissent in the next week or two. And if he does, then you sell him. I'm until he's on 5 yellows, I'm fine with it. And that might not happen. We see players on the 4 yellow card or 1 game shy of a ban quite often. They seem to carry on for ages without it. I remember, was it Mitrovic last season managed to survive for a while and then he got one. Yeah. What's your thinking with Jackson, mate? Are you a little bit reluctant to sell because the numbers have been there?
Yes, I don't think it's an easy transfer for sure. But again, I mean, Chelsea are an attack that isn't functioning, right?
Yeah.
And it's all fun and games for us to be sitting here from game week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's in 5 weeks, and I've been bigging Jackson up for the big chances that he's missed and for the non-pen XGI that he's been posting. But it's becoming a bit of a recurring theme, and I mean you can't really wait forever for his output to come, which is the argument behind selling him, and especially when you are looking at the City attack. I mean, their numbers in recent times have been incredible against West Ham, against last night in the Champions League, and even before that in the league. They're starting to up the ante now, and it's looking like they're going to score 3, 4, 5 goals in every game. And Forest is one of those games, especially because it's at the Etihad. Yeah. So I feel as if Alvarez, even though Alvarez's numbers aren't as good, they're all right. I mean, he's creating plenty of chances and taking a few shots. The quality of chances isn't there, but I mean, the volume is so high that I think he's going to do well. I don't think Jackson to Alvarez is a move I must make, but I think it's a good transfer. I'm actually more curious to hear your thoughts on Chilwell as to whether you think he comes back in.
Yeah. I get why going to Bournemouth, Pochettino was quoted saying like we want the more attacking left-sided player. Fine, like I can cope with that. And I've got a couple of friends. In fact, friend of the show, Olivia Bazaglo, was at that game. She's a Chelsea fan, as you guys will all know. Olivia actually tweeted to suggest that Mudryk was Chelsea's best attacking player. It's not something I really picked up on TV, but watching live, Chelsea fans are obviously like, yeah, okay, he's looking really bright, especially first half. And with that in mind, Pochettino's decision to drop Chilwell and play Mudryk looked good. And actually, Chelsea arguably should have been up at the break. Like we've seen Jackson missing chances all season, but again on the weekend just gone. Against Aston Villa, will he go, we're home, and therefore let's continue, let's threaten, let's play the more attacking guy? Or will he go, Aston Villa, let's give them some of the respect they deserve. They play with wing backs, and therefore Chilwell might be asked to, at times, track someone like a Matty Cash, which Mudryk's not going to do, and therefore go for the slightly more defensive guy. It's the $1 million question, and I hate sitting on the fence, but I am completely 50-50 on it, and I hope off the back of the press conference we gain a little edge on that.
There is the other quote as well, which is slightly more concerning, where he mentions after the game that he likes his fullbacks to defend, and he doesn't really want to create confusion among the attackers when the fullbacks are moving forward, which is sort of surprising because that's what historically he's done with Walker and Rose at Spurs. So, I mean, Chilwell is not someone who's going to sit back and defend, right?
No.
Which sort of puts me off him and makes me think that maybe Chilwell is not going to play as the left back, and if he is to play in this team, then he's going to come in for Mudryk. And whether or not that happens, we don't know. There's also this possibility of Sterling playing on the left and Palmer coming in as well. So, I mean, a lot of things are up in the air. It's very difficult to sit here and predict whether or not Chilwell is going to play.
Yeah, and Colwell's playing well at left back. Like, we should also address who is in that left back slot and that he's playing well. Now, Colwell is a centre back, but he's left-footed and comfortable out wide. He offers very little in terms of attacking threat in open play. Good attacking threat at set pieces, as we saw at the weekend with his disallowed goal. But Poch seems fairly happy with that back four. That back four has been the same back four for the last few games, and I'd be surprised if he changes it. So it looks like Chilwell's route to the 11 is simply him or Mudryk, or as you say, there could be a little shuffle in the pack. I'd like to think if Palmer starts, it will be in the 10, and Enzo drops into the midfield with Caicedo, and therefore Gallagher misses out. But Gallagher's been one of the Chelsea better players so far this season, so possibly not. Aston Villa to win 2-0, says Obafemi in the chat. Aston Villa Bozzy likes that. I'd say Aston Villa are probably favourites for this game. So regardless of if you own a Chelsea defender, do you think they keep a clean sheet? Probably not, which begs the question, does it not just make sense to jump and move your Chelsea defender to a Newcastle defender? I don't have any Newcastle defenders, and I look at Sheffield United and Burnley, and I see a minimum of one clean sheet there. And again, I guess the question for you is, do you go Chilwell to Botman? And you don't really have a Dogie you'd want to bring in and start this week. In Kabore versus Wolves, you could even
I
play,
could.
Because Chilwell's got the 1 point fear, isn't he? The fear is with Chilwell, he's coming on for 10 minutes.
Exactly. I mean, I can play Kabore this week. Honestly, I don't think it's a terrible fixture. I won't be surprised if that ended up being an 11. Kabore has been very attacking. I mean, he created 2 big chances last week. I actually like him as a pick. I don't think he's a terrible pick. I actually might even play him in the double game week. My concern is that if Chilwell is not starting this week and in the next week, not only am I starting Kabore this week, but next week I'm sort of forced to play a Stupinan at Villa unless I use a defensive transfer, because I won't be playing a doggy against Liverpool next week. So it's tricky. I mean, if I pick Alvarez, I'll probably have to make a defensive transfer next week.
Yeah, which then rules out Morris, doesn't it? And that's the dilemma I've got, mate. Like, I see the Nico Jackson spot as, if I use that transfer and actually do sell Jackson, I've still got to address bringing in a Newcastle defender. And then that leaves me, they're my 2 moves, that leaves me without Morris unless I'm bringing him on a hit. And again, if you're selling Jackson to Alvarez, you're not going to go and sell Alvarez to Morris. It's to Morris. Does Morris have to become Archer? And to do that, you need funds in the bank, which you're not going to have. Although you could go Chilwell to Botman to give you those funds, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, but again, that'll be for hit. And so there's definitely no way I'm going to be. Yeah, there's definitely no way I'll be buying Morris for a hit. The only route for him is in that second striker slot. So let's say if I get Alvarez this week, then I'll have to sell Alvarez for him next week. Simply.
Were you one of the people that thought if you bring Morris in, you'd captain him? Like, has that crossed your mind? Game week 7 captain. What's your early thoughts on that?
After last week, and the fact that we got away from exactly after the fact that we got away with murder, I am not going to take that risk. I mean, I haven't completely ruled out selling my second striker to him to bring him in. I think it could be a good buy, but I don't certainly think I'll be betting against Haaland next week now.
Yeah, Jono's mentioned Edouard. Also worth noting that Edouard is playing 90 for Palace, and Palace have got good fixtures.
Yeah, his numbers are good as well. But again, we're at that point where he'd rather go with the upside for the City attacker or go with the double game weaker. I mean, it's just one of those things. Gianni, what are your thoughts on Morris? Are you looking at him next week, or is he not in your transfer plans?
If I keep Jackson this week and don't make a forward move, there's a very good chance Jackson becomes Morris next week. If Jackson blanks against Villa, right? If Jackson looks good against Villa, and let's say Jackson scores and looks great, clearly you're going to keep him for Fulham and Burnley. That then blocks my Morris move. I'm not really interested in bringing Morris in as my 8th forward. I just think that gives me a dilemma every week for benching. I mean, I could bench Matoma that week, but again, that requires funds. So my priority isn't Morris. It's Newcastle defence. And bringing in a Newcastle defender as one of my next moves, whether that's this week or next. But a lot of it comes down to what I do with Jackson. And I think There's a good chance I give Jackson one more game, which
Yeah. I think if
I'm
I
reluctant to do, but
was in your position, if I was in your position, I would definitely do that, because unless you're selling for Alvarez this week, it makes very little sense to sell him. So
yeah,
it's an
I
easy
think
move.
so.
I don't think you should sweat on it too much.
I've got a
Gun to
soft spot for
head.
Darwin though, mate. I've got a soft spot for Darwin, haven't I? And I just think Darwin's gonna. I like that West Ham fixture a lot for at Anfield, and I'm convinced Darwin starts that game. But then Darwin starts often only means 60, 70 minutes. So
Yeah, I mean that's a fixture that I think Liverpool are going to do well in. And without Liverpool attack, I think yeah, it doesn't really look good for those of us who don't own Salah.
yeah, exactly. And Darwin protects me a little bit from that. A little bit he does.
Yeah.
I guess the one
Gun,
final
anyways,
point. Go on.
yeah. Gun to head. What do you do with my team? You save. You make the Chilwell transfer. You make the Jackson transfer.
I'd probably go Chilwell to Botman. And I just think there's very few that don't wildcard that will have double Newcastle defence. Like you're already a transfer ahead. You'll almost be 2 transfers ahead with those 2 Newcastle defenders in place. And I think there's a real fear that Chilwell just gets a 1-pointer.
Yeah, that there is, and the fact that I have Son as well. A lot of people will be buying Son in game week 8, so that's another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the team will be well set.
Yeah, Aston Villa, Bozzy, Baker. I take a -4 and do both moves. Again, I wouldn't be anti that. And that's purely driven by the Bernardo Silva injury. Like taking a -4 for a play, we cannot guarantee starts in Alvarez, but we can almost guarantee that this week. So yeah, to be fair, I don't mind both moves and being really aggressive with it.
I would have considered it, but the fact that the wild card is so close
Taking
makes me think that it's not worth it. I mean, let's say, if I sell Chilwell for Botman, then I don't think Jackson to Alvarez is worth it. I definitely don't think it's worth it this week. And similarly, if I get Alvarez, then I could. I mean, let's say worst case scenario, we don't hear positive news regarding Chilwell. I can pick a board. I don't think it's worth. I guess Botman has a low ceiling this week as well, right? Because he's not going to score more than 6 points. You won't expect him to.
True. Yeah.
So,
Pete says keep Chilwell. And look, I'm so on the fence with it. I don't mind these arguments to keep Chilwell. I would say I would be waiting for Poch's press conference because he is a manager that does reveal a little bit. There's not too many mind games with Poch, and he often answers direct questions, and he will be asked about the club vice captain, standing captain with Reece injured in Chilwell. That is one of the questions at Chelsea at the moment. Another one will be, what's Brozier's fitness like? You know, when does Brozier start getting game time? And that'll eat into Jackson minutes. So the questions Poch will be asked will have a huge influence on FPL because that it's the same in terms of tactical setup for Chelsea. And again, Brozier will be getting 20, 30 minutes off the bench, probably, I think, in the next couple of game weeks. But again, he won't be ready to start. Yeah, big dilemmas for you, mate. They're definitely the 2. And I know Alvarez is rising tonight, which tempts you, but I would still say information is so key and to hold and just have to suck it up with that price rise. I think.
Yeah. I'll give it some more thought again. It's a 50-50. I'm yet to decide.
Yeah, and you never know. In 2 hours' time, who knows? You've got an injury to Rashford or Bruno or whatever. So
exactly, and then all of this could just go out of the window.
Yeah, exactly. We like, especially off the back of European games. Let's see what information we get off the back of those results. Let's now go to our main questions, though, because we've got 3 questions, and then we're going to show you the wild card. Thank you, guys, in the chat. So many awesome comments. We're reading all of them. We can't bring them all up on screen, but we will occasionally do that. Likes and subscribes, though, massively appreciated. So there's over 200 of you watching. If you fancy hitting that like button, that'd be amazing. Jackson or Alvarez, we've kind of briefly touched on it, but let's just address this question outright. The numbers have been there for Alvarez. Of course they have been. In terms of the end product, Jackson hasn't delivered, but he has been putting up the big expected numbers. Mostly expected goals, but XGI is obviously looking at assists too. The point swing here is massive. 26 points, the difference between the 2 of them in only 5 games. What's interesting is Alvarez, we didn't think he'd have started 5 from 5. He's pretty much played every minute. And that's a big swing there, big man. But the underlying numbers, there's not much in it. But the actual numbers, which is all that matters, Alvarez produces.
Exactly. And the thing is that you don't see that's stopping anytime soon, because now that he's performing so well, Pep has labeled him as undroppable and as the first name on the team sheet, right? Um, Alvarez has overperformed for sure. I mean, you can see that he has 5 returns from XG of 2.9. But in terms of fantasy assists, he's had 5 fantasy assists from an XA of 1.24.
Good point.
So he's overperformed on the expected assists rally, and it's because of the fact that he's playing with elite finisher, and an elite finisher like Haaland, who just ends up inevitably taking his chance. I mean, the game against West Ham was an exception, but other than that, he's been lethal in front of goal. But the thing is that because he's playing in that position behind Haaland, he's sort of the engine in the City attack, and he creates so many chances that he tends to do well for bonus points as well. So let's say if he scores or if he gets a couple of assists, he'll inevitably sweep the bonus as well. So he has plenty of routes to points. He's cheap. Again, I can't falter. Jackson has the better numbers for sure. He is the focal point of his team. He has more goal threat, but he's simply not producing. That's the problem.
Do you think the that opening game of the season for Aston Villa, when they played that ridiculously high line against Newcastle, who kept having joy, I think to that and go, oh, please be so naive again, Aston Villa, and maybe Jackson actually will be playing against a super high line and have a little bit of joy in behind. Because pre-season, when we saw the Chelsea Tour of America, Jackson looked amazing and he did quite well playing against high lines, getting in behind. And we've not really seen that in the first 5 weeks in the Premier League. But I wonder if Aston Villa is actually a good opponent for him.
I think Chelsea will have plenty of joy against Villa. I mean, their defensive numbers are actually poor.
Yeah.
But again, Chelsea have a historical problem of not converting their chances. So I'm not bullish as I was, let's say, 2 weeks ago, because it's simply not happening for them.
Yeah. I think I'm with you there. Guys, Big Man did rightly point out the fantasy assist for Alvarez is 5. And not, I think 3 is the Opta assists, which I put on. This is taken from this rubbish YouTube channel that's Gianni Bottici's YouTube channel, who clearly doesn't look at his stats properly. I should also mention Alvarez got quite unlucky, didn't he? Because he would have had the assist for that Haaland penalty miss as well. So actually, Alvarez assist could even be higher. And he hit the bar with the free kick last week, didn't he? That he's literally doing all the De Bruyne things.
Exactly, and all set pieces on free kicks. So he's just someone who's a really, really good pick. I mean, I would struggle to sell him. If I buy him this week, then I would struggle to sell him for Morris in 7.
You can't sell Alvarez for Morris. It just feels so wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah, I find it very hard, because I do think he'll get rested in the EFL Cup game. In fact, he did say, Pep did mention that that's a game where he'll play the B teamers. And at the moment, clearly Alvarez is first choice, so I don't think he's going to play that fixture.
And that is a game Newcastle will have to play some B teamers as well. So I think that'll be a load of names we're not used to seeing in Premier League football. I should mention, whilst Alvarez has been amazing and the points return there, 37 FPL points, it's great. His expected numbers are good, but they're not amazing. There's not a huge amount still between him and Foden, in my opinion. He's just been the one getting the points. That could very easily swing. Foden's getting minutes. Foden's still affordable. And I still think Foden is almost as good an option as Alvarez. Sure, if I'm on a wild card, I'm picking Alvarez for Foden. But if you ask me now, would you swap them for a -4? Obviously, one's a forward, one's a midfielder. I'd probably say no, I just stick with my guy. And the reason I can't get to Alvarez is I have got Foden. And I think Nottingham Forest fixture is really nice for him. Again, in the Champions League yesterday, Foden looked super sharp. It was Alvarez that goes home with more returns. Foden did get one. But even the big chances missed from Haaland at West Ham, a lot of them was Foden involved, would have got more assists. And again, last night, big chances created. Foden's pretty high on that metric. So if you're with Foden, stay patient would be my advice. Sure, if you're on a wild card, you prioritise Alvarez. There's even a world on wild card. You go super aggressive for Forest and maybe the next couple, and then you start downgrading. But you could even go all 3 like that. I genuinely think if I was wildcarding, I'd probably go for the 3, but I quite like eggs in baskets on Man City.
I again, I don't disagree with whatever you said. I don't think I would pick all three, but I would pick Alvarez and Haaland for sure. They would pick themselves. I don't.
Yeah.
I think they're better midfielders to own than Foden. I think Foden is a good pick. I won't sell him for -4, but if I was wildcarding, I don't think I'd go Foden.
Would you go for a City defender on wildcard? Big man?
No, I won't. I won't because I think there are better options for cheaper, like the Newcastle defense. Even the likes of, let's say, someone like a Matty Cash or
Yeah.
Stupinan. I mean, the defenses obviously aren't as good, but you're going to get attacking returns. And we're seeing this season that clean sheets are not exactly as high as we used to see in the previous seasons.
Yeah.
And the fact that, these guys, Stupinan, Cash, they have that attacking threat makes me feel that they are going to offer better value. And we've seen with City time and again, even last night, they concede a rubbish shot from low XG shot. I mean, not rubbish in terms of the goal, but rubbish in terms of the XG, right? So, yeah, we've sort of seen it as a recurring trend. And with City's fixtures, I mean, after Wolves, after Forest, they have a very tough run. They have Brighton, United, Arsenal. I mean, you'd expect those teams to score against City.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I'm surprised how City have looked vulnerable for when teams are through on goal or do get an opportunity. Like, they don't concede many shots, but the shots they do, they seem to be going in. Even last night in the Champions League, just before half time, it's a bit of a defensive slip, but they're through in on goal and the opponent, a bit of a nobody team, you expect it to keep a clean sheet, and they don't. And we saw at the end of last season, so many went Ederson and they were conceding sloppy single goals, winning games comfortably, but like 3-1, 4-1. And again, we saw it last night, and we've seen it a bit in the Prem already. Let's go to question number 2. So we've the forward spot is obviously topical, but there's a couple more very topical points which we're going to address before we see a kind of template wildcard team that we've put together. Keep or sell United mid. I feel like United mids are pretty hot at the moment. Like, I'd be reluctant to sell. I don't have a United mid, and I'm a little bit worried about that. I mean, I say United mid. We're talking Bruno and Rashford, aren't we? Just those two.
Exactly. And I think this conversation is very pertinent for the conversation regarding whether or not you should wildcard as well.
Okay.
Because a lot of us have United mids at the moment. And are you 100% sure that they are terrible picks? I'm not. I own both. And I still think, especially Rashford, we've talked about Rashford. Rashford, I think, in this new role where he's playing as the striker, is a very good pick. I mean, he had 9 shots against Brighton. High XG as well. So I am still reluctant to sell them. And on wildcard, I definitely pick at least one of them. So I'm not entirely sure whether wildcarding just for the sake of improving your team, because the United mids have been failing, is the right play, because the numbers are still there, the fixtures are still there. In fact, I mean, like you've mentioned, I mean, we think of wildcarding around game week 9 or 10. When you look at United's fixtures, Yanni, they're playing Burnley away, Crystal Palace at home, Brentford away, Sheffield United away. I mean, those fixtures are really, really good for double mids, and for a team which is showing. I mean, the team is not exactly functional, but the attack is showing signs of promise. Mm-hmm. The concerns are more at the other end of the field as opposed to in attack for me. So I still think they're worth keeping.
Yeah, and back out on the left, Rashford's going to look better. We've seen a little bit of chemistry between him and Højlund. Again, we'll be scouting them tonight. Moving forward, let's see that combination between Rashford and Højlund and how that could affect Rashford. I was slightly apprehensive that Højlund being in the team could steal some of those chances from Rashford. I don't think we've seen any evidence of that in the game they have started together. I think we clearly not looking at these numbers. It was also worth noting that Ten Hag played with a diamond midfield with Bruno at the top of that diamond. So when we look at Bruno as an FPL asset, straight away with that tactical setup and Rashford in kind of a front two but drifting left, we go, oh, that's even better for Bruno. Now, Bruno didn't look quite on it. And it's interesting that tonight it looks like they've gone back to a 4-2-3-1. You would assume Palestri's going to play wide right, Rashford wide left, Bruno in the 10, and then Højlund up top. But again, that diamond does make me question whether or not, if Bruno continues to play time in a diamond, actually that could even be a better system for him. And again, you've got the penalty appeal. So I still think if I was picking between one, seeing them against Brighton, I'd be picking Rashford, but I wouldn't be surprised in 2 or 3 games' time if I say, oh, actually, Bruno's actually the slightly better option. So both, in their own right, for me, are good picks with those 4 fixtures coming up.
I'd also like to add here that let's say if you're skeptical about any of them, um, who do you sell them for? Are there any obvious replacements? I struggle to find too many obvious replacements this week with a better fixture. I mean, the fixture is really good. So I don't think selling either of them should be a cause for immediate concern.
Yeah. Unless you can, the only obvious sell would be if you want to get to Salah and you've got tons of money in the bank and you need to sell one of your 9 million-ish midfielders. But even then, you'd perhaps look at your Spurs midfielders and go, oh, I can convert one of them to Salah over a United midfielder, just given the next couple of fixtures. So yeah, I think we agree there. But let's see how United get on tonight. And it is worth noting they're playing Wednesday in the Champions League, and it is away in Germany. The journey time, how that affects them. They do play Burnley, of course, it must be on the Sunday. I'm just looking now. No, they actually do play on the Saturday.
It's Saturday, 8 p.m. 8 p.m.
Still, though, Wednesday night in Germany to the Saturday, I don't think Ten Hag will be happy with that. He'd have wanted a Sunday fixture.
But Ten Hag is known for running his players into the ground, so I don't.
He does.
At immediate risk.
Yeah, there won't be much rotation. It's not like De Zerbi, where at Brighton we'll see huge rotation from Europe and Premier League because he doesn't like them getting anywhere near that red zone. Ten Hag is very happy doing that. If Pellistri plays really well tonight, though, that is a spot that can be nailed in this United team. I don't think Ten Hag wants to play the diamond. The diamond is a solution to not having a right winger, not wanting to play Sancho. Greenwood's gone, and obviously Anthony's out the mix as well at the moment. And it's like, oh, okay, Pellestri's the only other option, so let's give him a go against Bayern Munich and see. He's 4.4. If he goes and bangs tonight, he's going to cement a place for the next couple. Burnley away, Crystal Palace at home. If you're looking for a budget mid, he could be a nice little differential pick. His ownership, by the way, Pellistri, 0.2%, as you might expect. Super, super low. Should we move on to our final question and then look at some wildcard action? We're going to go back to the Chilwell debate, and this might help us a little bit because we've got a graphic between game week 4 and 5. This is interesting because, just backing up Poch's comments, we flipped game week 4 so it faces the same direction, so we can compare like for like. So we know the numbers are upside down; they're meant to be. But we can see the slight difference when Mudrik's playing on the left. He's almost the most advanced player on the pitch, like level with Sterling and Jackson. When Chilwell's in on the left, he's not anywhere near as advanced as Sterling and Jackson, and he's not getting those penalty area touches as Mudrik does. And he has more defensive responsibility. He plays a lot closer to Colwill. If you were betting on this, big man, before we hear from Poch, what percentage chance do you think he goes Chilwell versus Villa?
I would say 40%.
Yeah. It's close to a 50-50 call, isn't it?
Yeah. What about you?
I said 50% earlier, so I'm going to stick with that. And I'm 50% between the two names on screen, Chilwell and Mudryk, but you did make a good point earlier that Sterling can play there to accommodate a Palmer. And I hadn't thought of that.
Exactly.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, Chelsea fans have been calling for Palmer's inclusion, so it could happen.
He's looked good. I absolutely think Palmer should be starting, but I'd play Chilwell left, Palmer central, and Sterling right. But that does mean no Gallagher, who's been playing well, and then Enzo drops deeper. We've seen Enzo playing number 10, and he doesn't look... He's a brilliant player, Enzo, but I don't think he's a 10.
The problem is that it's looking unlikely that Chilwell will be playing as the left back anymore.
Yeah, that's
basically the problem. Yeah. That's basically the problem, because if there was a 50-50 chance that he can play on the left wing or as a left back, then I would be more confident. Then I'd sort of put his chances starting at 60. But now the fact that he's only sort of resigned to one position, it makes me wonder. But again, he's the vice captain, so there is a chance that he sort of comes back in because obviously he's a senior player.
Yep. Big man, let me ask you about my team. We haven't got a graphic, but if I sell Chilwell to buy Trippier this week, which is probably my most likely transfer, I give myself a benching headache because I've got Colwill, who I would want to start because I think the clean sheet odds are still okay for Chelsea. So do I start Colwill and play a back four and drop one of my Spurs midfielders, or do I bench Colwill and play both Spurs midfielders?
Definitely play the Spurs mids for sure. North London
Upside.
derbies are historically very high scoring, and I don't think Chelsea will keep a clean sheet.
Yeah.
And Villa are
Their
decent
attacking numbers
attack.
are good, aren't they?
Yeah, they're good, and I think since Emery's taken over, they've scored in almost every game, barring 2 matches, something like that. In
Really? Wow.
in around 30 to 35 games, they scored in almost every, apart from 2 or 3. I don't exactly remember the number, but yeah, I mean, I don't really see a clean sheet for Chelsea in this one.
Yeah, Mike makes a good point. Mark says Villa will score. You're probably right. Mike says Bournemouth should have scored as well. And again, Bournemouth put up fairly good XG numbers. Like Sanchez had a good game and Chelsea relied on him. He should play Mudryk, to be honest. Gianni could get in behind. Yeah. And again, I think the Aston Villa high line and being able to exploit that, Mudryk can play on the last man. Chilwell's better attacking from left wing back to left wing. He's used to running later into the box and not necessarily playing on the last man, starting position slightly deeper. And we've seen Chilwell struggling playing as an out and out winger. Worth noting there, guys. So yeah, thank you for all your comments and thank you for your likes. We've got Cam in the chat with us tonight. Good to see you, Cam. Are you on babysitting duty tonight? Maybe the little one's asleep. Chilwell to Botman is my first step in being able to afford Salah. Okay, so starting to already use the funds. My take with Salah, and we'll ask Big Man the same thing, is I'm probably not going to be able to shuffle enough around to reach him until I wildcard. But it looks like you're already planning on doing that, Cam. Yeah, are you the same, Big Man? You're not willing to rip your team up to accommodate him now? It will have to wait.
Absolutely, and that's why I've sort of shortlisted that window of game week 9 or 10 because I realize I will need him in that period. But for someone who's used his wild card, or for someone who does not intend to use the wild card in, let's say, game week 9 or 10, if you want to get to Salah in one move, then yes, getting Botman is a great transfer. In fact, I really like the transfer in because then you can get to Salah in like 1 or 2 moves, which most of us can't.
Yeah, exactly that. I think we're aligned on Salah. And whilst it's a really good fixture this week, I look at Salah's fixtures and go, it would be great. I'd love him against West Ham at home. But then I think it's 2 away fixtures. And I look at that and go, I can make do without him for those 2 weeks and then look to bring him in on wildcard. Like it's Spurs away, Brighton away. That's tough.
Exactly.
Game week 9, it's really nice, isn't it? Everton, Forest, Luton, Brentford. Yeah, we want a bit of that. And by then, I'll know if Darwin's nailed, Big Man, so I can go Salah and Darwin on my wildcard. Which I would love to do. I'm such a...
Or even Trent for that matter.
Yeah.
I mean, Trent is not a write-off. You look at those fixtures are so good. If Trent is playing, then there will be a lot of decisions to make because getting Trent, Salah, Haaland in will not be easy.
Yeah. But doable on a wild card, which is another reason why wild card then works for me. Because it's the Liverpool assets. Because I might want to go Darwin, Salah, Trent. And again, I might want to go double or triple Villa. Again, on wild card now. Well, maybe you are going double Villa. But I think I can commit a little bit more to Aston Villa. Maybe Moreno's back then as well, rather than Cash, who could be vulnerable. So let's have a look at what
Brighton as well. Brighton
as
well. Brighton as well. Brighton have a very good run from game week 10. At the moment, we're not really looking at a Brighton attacker, and even some wildcard drafts don't even have a Stupinan. So
yeah,
that's another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I massively slipped that one. I'm noting for my own personal about Brighton there, game week 10, because I'd completely forgotten the idea of wildcarding slightly later allows you to go bigger on effectively the best attack in the league at the moment, like them and Man City.
Exactly, and not just that. The fact that you can then wildcard your way out of Spurs, who have a very tough run after game week 9, Man United, very tough run after game week 9. These are the kind of things that you can address. We'll have more clarity on keepers, as we've discussed.
Yeah.
These are things that that warrant a closer look.
Yeah. So this is a fairly template-looking wildcard team. I must admit, if I was wildcarding now, it would look very similar to this. I think I'd probably find money for Trippier because he's the exciting Newcastle defender. But I get if you're going Salah, you've got to make sacrifices. I'm not sure I'd have Saka on a wildcard with those. I'd look to bring Saka in when I want to bring him in and when the fixtures turn for them. But knowing those fixtures, I'd maybe go someone like, instead of Burn, I'd go Trippier, and instead of Saka, I'd go for like a
Eze, great fixtures.
Eze would be a great pick. Eze or Foden for me, yeah.
Exactly, nailed in on penalties. I think, Saka to Eze, Burn to Trippier, because Burn could be rotated as well.
Yeah, Lewis Hall's there. Yeah,
and Lewis Hall, Target is there as well. I mean,
Livramento can even do a job, left back.
Yeah, so if from the 4 Newcastle defenders, I think he's at the highest risk of getting rotated.
Agreed. So Saka, he was poor against you. It was poor against Milan as well. He's the weak link in that Newcastle 11 for me.
Saka to Eze, Burn to Target. Rest, I think, Estupiñán you can choose to go without because the fixtures aren't good after game week 7. But if you want him from the long term, that's the counter argument. Kabore is there because he's cheap and you might need funds later. You can do a job in game week 7. I mean, Botman, we've spoken about. Cash, again, great XGI numbers, and he's there for the Villa's fixture string. Fleck and Areola rotate really, really well. Again, you can go with Turner or Areola because I don't really mind playing Areola as the promo play because you can save 0.5 with the move. And Mbomo, Diaby, Rashford. I mean, Diaby's there for the fixture run. I think Rashford and Mbomo, Salah, they pick themselves on the wild card. So do Alvarez and Haaland. I don't really mind this. The start's a good draft, solid one.
Yeah, I like it. I think the keepers, again, like on wildcard, we spoke about Raya earlier. I'd love to be able to hold, but for the time being, those 2 keepers rotate well. Brentford's numbers have been good. West Ham defence, we know historically can be useful, and it's a 4.1 option. The more we've discussed it tonight, big man, certainly you've given me clarity in terms of what I think I'll do with my move by just talking about it. Like that massively helps with the Chilwell idea out. But again, I mentioned that if I was your team, I'd be 5% likely to wildcard. At my team, I feel like I'm around 20. I feel like we both should be at 0. Having looked at this team, looked at your team, and look at the advantages of going game week 8-9. That's not to say everyone watching should be at 0%. Christ, no, absolutely not. Like, wildcards are so team dependent, but I just think the upside to going a little bit later so we can go bigger on teams like Brighton and Villa and Liverpool, and we can drop our Spurs and our United short term if we want to, and we'll have more information about keepers. I much prefer that. Has your percentage odds changed?
I mean, it's very team specific, but I mean, what are the pros of let's say this wildcard draw? I mean, the main pro is that you can sort the defense out. You can get on double Newcastle defense. You can get to Fleck and you can get rid of Pickford.
Salah.
I mean, Salah is the big one.
Salah's the big one, isn't it?
Exactly. You can get Salah, but again, is he that important for the next 3 weeks? Because, let's say something like a Saka plus Son could come close to matching Salah plus Diaby because Diaby doesn't have the best fixtures in the next 2 weeks, right? So, again, we have to sort of factor that in as to who we are selling to. Again, the other thing is that with this team, what's the route to a Spurs mid? Is it to sell Rashford? I'm not entirely sure that's a good idea.
I guess sell Saka maybe for the Man City fixture and then for a few, but to get to a Spurs
again,
mid,
I mean, there are holes in it. Is what I'm trying to say. And Alvarez, Haaland is very good, but let's say if you feel like attacking Luton, then you can't. I mean, someone like yourself with Jackson, you can go to Morris next week and then dead end out of it. If you choose to wildcard in 8, 9, or 10, that's fine.
Yeah.
But with this team, I don't think I'd be picking Morris as my second striker at all.
No, you wouldn't. Again, on wildcard, I'd be tempted. And I said earlier, I'd want Morris to be my 7th, but that's because I'm not on a wildcard. If I was dead ending my team, I could go Morris quite happily as my 8th. And again, maybe that is what I'll do as my 8th attacker, knowing that in 2 weeks' time, I'll be able to go someone like an Archer back in. Because clearly, Archer is the best 8th choice attacker in the league. Yeah, I think it's I think this team has an amazing game week 6. Like, and wildcards often see, like, they're not made for 1 week, of course they're not, but they often see a big increase the week that the trigger is pulled. And again, I can't help but look at this team and go, it's almost perfect for game week 6. But what about 7 and 8, and what about 9? And then by then the template's shifted, and you can't get to all those players everyone else is jumping on.
Exactly,
so
but
you get
again,
a big game this week.
Yeah, my question is, will you get Morris if you were wildcarding this week?
Yeah,
You would.
I think so. Or I'd have a route to him next week, and there's no money in the bank with this at a team to be able to go Archer to.
Okay. Let's assume this is your wildcard draft. How would you fit Morris in?
I wouldn't have Saka, so I'd probably have Morris as my 8th attacker, and I know it'd give me a benching headache for a few weeks.
My counter to that is that, what if you want Saka or Bruno, or let's say Trent, like we said, in game week 9, 10, because like you said, the template can change and Arsenal's fixtures will turn, and so will Liverpool's.
Yeah.
So you will have to sell Morris to an Archer.
Yeah.
For sure.
Which is a precious transfer. Yeah.
Which is a precious transfer, which is worth 4 points. So again, I'm not sure whether the benefit of owning Morris on wildcard is worth it.
All I'd say about that precious transfer, and you're absolutely right, is off the back of a fresh wildcard now, knowing you're not bookmarking many or any other transfers in, unless you're getting injuries or suspensions or big dips in forms, and of course other players doing really well. But I look at this team and go, for the next couple of weeks, I probably wouldn't have an obvious transfer to make. Therefore, I might be in that position that many managers were in game week 2 or game week 3, where they were going, oh, I don't actually really need to make a transfer. Like, I remember you, Big Man, you were rolling, you often had 2 in the bank. So actually reversing Morris to Archer to get the funds so you can go to a Spurs midfielder, I don't think would be an issue in game week 8 or 9, because I don't think you could get unlucky, you get a suspension or an injury, but I don't think you're going to have any other massive fires. So maybe you can commit to bookmarking that one move in by going Morris as your 8th attacker now, and then going to Archer in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, though, mate. I'm massively
for sure. This has been a very engaging discussion. I mean, it's helped clear a lot of things in my head, at least.
Yeah. Mine too. I think going into the stream, I was thinking my moves were either Jackson or Chilwell. Like, I knew it was one of those moves, but the more I think about it, the more the Chilwell move happens. And again, I'll be waiting for Poch's comments just in case. But with that Chilwell move happening, I was slightly concerned I'm giving myself a benching headache by going, oh, I've got a Chelsea defender on my bench. But actually, as Aston Villa Bozzy said in the chat, as you said, Chelsea aren't keeping a clean sheet against Aston Villa, are they? They've been poor defensively. I think the chances of that happening are probably around 20, 30%. And with that in mind, I'm happy benching Colwell. Of course I am. So yeah, I fancy giving Jackson another week as well, knowing Villa are playing in Poland on Thursday night. I just hope they're a little bit tired off the back of that one. So yeah, that's where we're at. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If we've got any final questions, we'll get to a couple. If you fancy hitting that like button, that'd be amazing. Yes, at RTJ, we are missing CH tonight, maybe because of the different time. She didn't quite get the notification, which for you guys, do make sure when you subscribe, you hit that notification bell, because these streams aren't always exactly the same time, same place every week. For example, on Friday, instead of streaming at 7, we might be 6, Dean and I. Again, we haven't committed to that yet, but the notifications will really help you guys out. Hopefully, if you're just joining, go back and watch the last hour. Eddie says, what about Doku? I still prefer Foden, but yeah, an exciting
Doku is
asset.
nice, but Doku is fine, I presume, for the next week or so. But then Grealish is back in training. Yeah, that's another factor.
Yeah, exactly that. And I don't think he'll play him and Grealish, even though Doku can play right. They are... I can't see him setting up too often with those 2 wide men. It will be Doku or Grealish, and then Bernardo or Foden. West Ham consideration for wildcard around 9-10. Yeah, West Ham got a good run of fixtures, RTJ. And Ward-Prowse tends to be the most unfashionable pick in the game that always achieves good numbers. But again, he doesn't seem to be in many content creators' teams ever. I can't remember ever owning Ward-Prowse.
I haven't even come close.
I know, it's just such a shame. And Bowen, maybe by then Bowen will be on our radar for wildcarders. What do you think to this? Wilson over Alvarez? I mean, was Wilson one for you, big man?
I think he can do well. I do expect him to start with Sheffield, but then again, the EFL Cup game is a lottery. I mean, who knows who starts there? And if
Yeah.
Wilson starts, then Isaac will get the easier fixture against Burnley.
Yeah. Martin says about Calvert-Lewin, don't bother, mate. Like, I don't like telling people not to buy players, and I don't like ruling out players that are have terrible injury records. Yeah, well, just but with Calvert-Lewin, and I know we shouldn't say it, but of course he's not injured till he's injured, but there's never a time when he's not. Like, I can't remember the last time Calvert-Lewin started 4 Premier League games consecutively. Go look it up, but I very much doubt that's happened since probably Ancelotti. I'd swerve him. 2 free transfers, no fires. Saka to Salah. Okay, if you can get there quite comfortably in 2 moves, then I like that move. Planning to wildcard in game week 19. Yeah, I mean, if you're not wildcarding around game week 8 to 10 to 12, 19 feels like the obvious time, knowing it's the last time you can do it, and there's still a nice swing there. And I think that's around the Boxing Day fixtures too.
Yep, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Eze versus Fulham, great punt. We've spoken about him on penalties, 90 minutes, great pick.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for your questions. We'll answer the last one about Gvardiol. Man City play at 3 o'clock on Saturday. The deadline is 1:30. There is a good chance, stay engaged on Twitter, that we get a Man City team leak. If Gvardiol isn't starting, and remember, he didn't start in the Champions League. I expect him to start in the Prem, as he did last weekend. If he's not starting, then rather than sell Chilwell to Trippier, I'll probably be selling Gvardiol to Trippier, just because I can't be bothered with that roulette. Diaz was the Man City pick if you want to go for the nailed guy. I thought Gvardiol would be fairly close, but actually it looks like Pep's going to use Ake a ton as well. And it was not going to be Ake and Gvardiol. And I hoped we'd see them both at times. One left back, one left centre back. That's not been the case. And Gvardiol is certainly vulnerable to Pep roulette as much as an Akanji, a Walker, Ake. He's in that bracket. He's not at the Diaz bracket, and he's not even just below that at the Stones when fit bracket either. So bear that one in mind. Big man, thank you so much. I'll see you next week.
Pleasure, Shani. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, mate. And yeah, enjoy the Champions League, guys. If CH has just joined, CH, we'll see you on Friday. We have missed you this evening. But yeah, if you've just joined, go back and watch the last hour. If not, then you might fancy watching the Champions League because it's Bayern Munich versus Man United, and that is going to be one for eye test scouting for me. Good night, guys. He's been Big Man. I've been Janny, and we've been chasing green arrows.